Capricorn. There are certain days that pass like any other, quiet, uneventful, invisible to the outside world. And then there are days like January 2nd, 2026. Days that don't announce themselves. Days that don't erupt in chaos or transformation, but quietly shift the very axis of your life. And unless you're listening closely, unless you've lived long enough to recognize silence as a sign, you might miss it. But your soul won't, because something deeper than logic, older than memory, is moving within you. You might feel unusually calm. You might feel like nothing important is happening. You might even feel bored. But let me tell you something only seasoned Capricorns truly understand. When your life path is about to lock in for real, there is no noise, only gravity. And that gravity is pulling you into alignment right now. Not with force, not with fire, but with finality. You are not stepping into a choice. You are becoming the choice itself. And this video isn't about predictions. It's not about superficial trends. It's about decoding the invisible spiritual threshold you've just crossed. Because on January 2nd, something triggered deep inside your energy field, and it's shifting everything. Not suddenly, but permanently. And if you feel it, if you've sensed something anchoring within you without explanation, then this message is yours. You were never meant to rush into this year. You were meant to click into it, to settle into the version of yourself that no longer negotiates with chaos. In a moment, I'm going to show you why this subtle shift is more powerful than any dramatic breakthrough. What mistake could quietly unravel your progress if you're not aware of it? And how 2026 is about to align with the deepest version of you, not the loudest. But first, let's begin with what most people completely overlook. The stillness. That calm feeling you can't explain. It's not nothing. It's the very thing you've been waiting for. Stay with me. Everything you're about to hear is meant for the Capricorn who's ready to move in silence and never look back. Comment if this resonates with you. And let's begin. Part 1. The hidden energy that was activated on January 2nd. Capricorn. January 2nd didn't roar. It didn't rush in like a storm. It didn't throw your world into chaos or bring tears to your eyes. No, it arrived like a whisper, and that's exactly why it was real. Because the most important shifts in a Capricorn's life almost never look important at first glance. They don't explode. They settle. They happen not through force, but through quiet inner calibration. Not through external validation, but through the sudden absence of internal conflict. You may have woken up that day and felt nothing extraordinary. The air felt still. The clock moved as always. The world asked the same things of you it always does. But beneath the surface of your awareness, something locked in. Not an event, not a change in circumstances, but a decision, a direction, a definitive end to all the inner bargaining you've been doing with your purpose. And here's the truth. Most people don't understand. Capricorns rarely announce their breakthroughs. They live them. They become them. That's what's unfolding in your life right now. Not a choice you need to make, but one you've already made deep within you. Maybe you can't name it yet. Maybe it doesn't have form, but you feel it. You feel it in how you've stopped seeking confirmation for your inner clarity. You feel it in how certain patterns that used to pull you back now feel irrelevant. You feel it in how you're no longer trying to explain yourself to people who were never meant to understand. This isn't a moment for action. It's a moment of internal locking, where everything you've lived through, every delay, every frustration, every silent ending has brought you to a place where your soul says, I know. No more overthinking. No more checking the wind before every step. No more shaping yourself into someone you're not just to feel safe in spaces that were never meant for you. What's happening is not loud because it's not performative. It's foundational. January 2nd, 2026 was not meant to change your life in a visible way. It was meant to set the invisible coordinates of your life in place. to align you internally with a direction that is no longer optional, no longer open for debate, no longer vulnerable to external doubt. This isn't the adrenaline-fueled rush of a New Year's resolution. This is the bone-deep knowledge that you're not going back. Not to old habits, not to half-hearted roles, not to relationships you've already outgrown in silence. And this isn't about being cold or distant. It's about being rooted. There's a version of you emerging now who no longer needs chaos to feel motivated, who no longer chases recognition to feel valuable, who no longer sacrifices well-being in the name of duty. And this version of you isn't fragile. It's unshakable, because it's built on the one thing that makes Capricorn unstoppable: integrity. Not the kind the world applauds, but the kind that only you will ever know. The kind that lets you lay your head down at night and say, "I did not betray myself today." So if you felt strange since January 3rd, if you felt an eerie calm or an unexplained clarity, you are not imagining it. The shift didn't happen outside of you. It happened within. And that's why it matters more than any visible breakthrough ever could. Because once a Capricorn is clear on who they are, there is no force on earth that can pull them off course. Life lesson. The world often teaches us to fear silence, to associate it with emptiness, indecision, or loneliness. But Capricorn silence has always been your language of truth. When you stop talking yourself out of what you already know, when you stop asking the world for permission to feel certain, that's when your real life begins. Not the life of proving, the life of living aligned. You don't need loud energy to mark a turning point. Sometimes clarity comes quietly, but changes everything. Comment if this resonates with you. And now, let's talk about why this quiet moment may be more powerful than any dramatic breakthrough you've ever had. Part 2. Why this quiet moment is more powerful than any breakthrough. Capricorn, you've been taught that if something matters, you should feel it. Strongly, loudly, emotionally. That important moments should arrive with intensity, your heart racing, your mind buzzing, your body flooded with adrenaline. But that's never how your soul has worked, has it? Your most transformative moments rarely came with fanfare. They came in solitude, in stillness, in the pause between breaths when something quietly clicked into place inside you. And that's what makes this shift so powerful. January 2nd didn't offer a breakthrough. It offered something far more permanent. A baseline reset. A recalibration of what you will and will not carry anymore. This isn't an emotional surge. It's a structural decision. And that matters more than you think, because emotions rise and fall. Inspiration fades. Motivation returns in cycles. But what has changed in you isn't a mood. It's the foundation from which every decision will now be made. From this point forward, you'll notice something different in how you respond to life. Where you once said, maybe, you'll say no. Where you once hesitated, you'll feel your center hold firm. Where you once explained, defended, justified, you'll now simply move forward. Because the truth is, you've outgrown the version of you who needed to negotiate their worth every day. You've stepped into the version of you that knows worth isn't proven, it's remembered. And if you've been feeling unusually calm since this shift began, that's not complacency, it's alignment. When your outer life doesn't yet reflect your inner transformation, it can feel surreal. You go through the motions. You interact with the same people. You perform the same tasks. But something is different. You're less interested in forcing things to happen. You're less reactive to opinions that once mattered too much. You feel less pressure to chase and more peace in simply being. This is not stagnation, it's sovereignty. And Capricorn, this is where your true power lives. Because for too long, you've associated progress with pain. You've believed that the only way to rise was through resistance. That growth had to come through hardship, urgency, exhaustion. But this shift is showing you something different. Progress doesn't always scream. Sometimes it breathes. Sometimes the greatest leap forward isn't made in motion, but in stillness. Not in pushing harder, but in choosing what not to pursue anymore. That is the wisdom only time teaches. And Capricorn, you are the student of time. You've learned that sustainable power isn't about speed, it's about clarity. Not the clarity that comes from analyzing every angle, but the clarity that settles into your bones and says, this is who I am, and this is where I'm going. No urgency, no announcement, just truth. And here's what makes this moment unlike any you've experienced before. In the past, you've changed because you had to. You adapted out of survival. You endured out of necessity. But now, you're choosing clarity without a crisis. You're choosing alignment without needing a breakdown. You're no longer waiting for life to force a shift. You've become the shift. That's maturity. That's evolution. That's mastery. And as this new inner alignment settles, you'll start to notice something subtle but consistent. You stop chasing, and things start coming to you. Not because you demanded them, but because you finally became the version of yourself who can hold them. Capricorn, you don't need to prove you've changed. Your energy will do that for you. You don't need to dramatize the transition. You are the transition, and the world will respond in time. Because when a Capricorn locks into their path, the external world eventually has no choice but to rearrange itself in response. Life lesson. The greatest changes in life don't always announce themselves. Sometimes they arrive disguised as stillness. But stillness isn't absence, it's integration. When you honor the moments that feel uneventful, you learn that the quietest decisions often carry the most weight. Not because others see them, but because you do. Growth doesn't always need a spotlight. Sometimes it needs solitude. And Capricorn, you've earned this stillness. Don't rush past it. Let it teach you what striving never could. Comment if this resonates with you. And next, we'll look at the one subtle mistake that could undo this clarity without you even realizing it's happening. Part 3. The one mistake that could quietly pull you off course. Capricorn, now that the shift has begun, now that your internal compass has finally aligned, there's something you need to be aware of. It's not failure. It's not resistance. It's not people trying to sabotage your growth. Those are obvious. The real danger, the one most Capricorns never see coming, is this: doubting your clarity simply because it feels too calm. You've spent years living in survival mode, working under pressure, proving your worth through constant effort, enduring intensity as your default setting. So when peace finally arrives, when your inner world no longer argues with itself, when you're no longer hustling just to feel stable, it can feel suspicious, unfamiliar. You might start wondering, shouldn't I feel more? Isn't this too easy? Am I missing something? That's the trap. You've been conditioned to associate importance with intensity. And without that emotional chaos, you might second-guess the very clarity you've been praying for. But Capricorn, hear this. Peace is not the absence of growth. It's the evidence of it. When you've finally aligned with who you truly are, you don't need adrenaline. You don't need conflict. You don't need pressure to push you forward. You simply know. And that knowing is quiet. It doesn't scream. It doesn't rush. It doesn't need applause. It waits, patient, rooted, certain. The mistake comes when you interpret that stillness as doubt. When you open doors you've already closed just to make sure. When you re-enter conversations that drained you just to be polite. When you reconsider decisions that were already sealed just because you're used to pain-meaning progress. But this is the moment where you choose something else, something truer. You choose to trust the shift even when it feels unfamiliar. You choose to honor the calm even when you're tempted to disrupt it. Because this time the shift didn't come from crisis, it came from wisdom. And wisdom doesn't perform, it simply stands. And now that you're standing in your own clarity, the only thing that can pull you off course is your own hesitation, not the opinions of others, not external obstacles, but the internal urge to seek emotional confirmation for something that has already been resolved on a soul level. Here's what that looks like. You start revisiting old dynamics not because you miss them, but because you doubt your decision to walk away. You begin re-evaluating your new boundaries not because they're wrong, but because they feel so different. You overthink your peace because you're not used to having it. But Capricorn, don't confuse stillness with stagnation. You are not standing still, you are standing firm. And that's new. So instead of asking, why don't I feel more urgency? Ask this, why do I believe urgency is necessary to feel safe? That question alone can break the cycle. Because the truth is, your life has never needed to be dramatic to be meaningful. It just needed to be yours. And now it is. This clarity, this stillness, this rootedness. It's not a detour. It's the destination. Let it settle. Let it stay. Let it shape everything that comes next. Life lesson. The soul doesn't always evolve through fire. Sometimes it evolves through silence. Not every breakthrough has to burn. Some come like winter, still soft and certain. Capricorn, the danger isn't in missing the moment. It's in not trusting it. You've already made the choice. Don't unmake it just because it feels different than what you're used to. Growth doesn't always scream. Sometimes it waits for you to recognize it. And this time, the only thing you need to do is not interrupt it. Comment if this resonates with you. Because in the next part, we'll explore what this locked-in clarity means for the rest of 2026 and why everything is about to move not faster but deeper. Part 4. What this locked-in direction means for the rest of 2026. Capricorn. January 2nd wasn't a destination. It was a gate. And now that you've crossed it, the entire landscape of 2026 begins to reorganize itself, not around pressure but around purpose. This year will not demand more from you. It will require something different, stability from within. Because when your inner compass is finally aligned, the way you navigate life transforms at the root. You no longer make decisions from fear of missing out. You no longer chase timelines that don't match your rhythm. You no longer compromise your peace to maintain what's already expired. Instead, you begin to choose, not react, not survive, not settle, but choose with calm, with clarity, and with conviction. And here's what that really means for the months ahead. You will start moving slower on purpose. Not because you're lost, but because you're now walking in the right direction. And that kind of movement doesn't rush. In your career, you'll feel less interested in status, more interested in substance. You'll prioritize alignment over advancement, because success that costs your well-being is no longer acceptable to the version of you that just anchored on January 2nd. In your finances, you'll stop pursuing more, just for the sake of more. You'll invest in what sustains you. You'll define wealth by peace of mind, not just numbers. In your relationships, you'll feel a profound shift. You won't be as emotionally available to people who drain you. You won't ignore the tension in spaces where your soul no longer fits. Instead, you'll begin to honor your energy like a sacred resource because it is. And in your rest, yes, even in how you recover, you'll stop treating rest like a reward and start treating it like a requirement. This is what it means to live with direction locked in. It doesn't mean life gets easier. It means you stop making it harder by betraying what you already know. Capricorn. The way you move this year won't be flashy, but it will be consistent. And in your world, consistency is magic. Because every time you act from alignment, the impact multiplies. Every time you choose from clarity, you waste less energy. And when you protect your path, life begins to support it. People will notice the change in you, not because you announce it, but because your presence has shifted. You'll speak less, you'll explain less, you'll react less. But what you do say, what you do choose, what you do pursue, will carry weight. And that weight will draw different opportunities into your orbit, not by force, but by resonance. You're not chasing anymore. You're attracting by becoming more of yourself than ever before. And that is the path 2026 is unlocking for you now. Not a louder path, a deeper one. Not a more impressive life, a more honest one. Not more recognition, but more rootedness. You won't need to be everywhere. You'll just need to be exactly where you're meant to be. And the best part, this clarity won't fade like motivation. It will stabilize like truth. Because what happened on January 2nd wasn't a temporary high. It was a soul-level decision to move through the rest of this year with self-respect, alignment, and peace non-negotiable. And that changes everything. Life lesson. Sometimes the greatest transformation is not in what changes around you, but in what you no longer tolerate within you. When you begin choosing from clarity instead of urgency, living from alignment instead of exhaustion, and honoring peace over performance. That's when you become unstoppable. Not because you're doing more, but because everything you're doing is now true. Comment if this resonates with you. And next, we'll close this journey with a final message. A quiet reminder of what you've just stepped into and why this moment doesn't need proof. It only needs trust. Final conclusion. A closing message of trust, clarity, and Capricorn strength. Capricorn, if you've stayed with me until now, then this message wasn't just meant for your mind. It was meant for your soul. You didn't arrive at this point by chance. You didn't stumble into this stillness. You didn't slow down because you gave up. You slowed down because something inside you finally settled. And now that inner calm, this unshakable clarity, is not a phase. It's a threshold. A quiet initiation into the next version of your life. One that doesn't need to be justified. One that doesn't require validation. One that doesn't rely on applause, recognition, or speed. Because Capricorn, you've already done the hard part. You waited. You endured. You let go of roles that no longer fit. You navigated endings without closure. You withstood seasons of silence where nothing seemed to move, when in truth, everything was aligning beneath the surface. And now that your direction is locked in, you don't need to fight for momentum anymore. You are the momentum. You don't need to explain why you've changed. You don't need to defend why you're walking away from certain things. You don't even need to plan 10 steps ahead, because your next chapter isn't about having all the answers. It's about honoring the clarity you already hold. Let the world adjust. Let old connections fall away quietly. Let timing take care of what's not yours to force. You're no longer building a life that looks right. You're building one that feels right, not because it's perfect, but because it's real. And that is the Capricorn way, measured, mature, rooted in truth. So as you move through the rest of 2026, remember this. You don't need intensity to know something's real. You don't need urgency to act. You don't need fear to stay focused. All you need is trust. Trust in your direction. Trust in the silence. Trust in the version of you that emerged from the fire and chose clarity over chaos. This is not a path you need to announce. This is a path you walk deliberately, consistently, and without compromise. And what you honor today becomes what grows tomorrow. Comment my direction is locked if you feel this truth in your bones. Not for me, for yourself. As a quiet declaration that you've crossed the threshold. And if this journey has spoken to your soul, if it's helped you feel seen, steady, or supported, then I invite you to subscribe to this channel, Zodiac Secrets Revealed. Because this isn't just a place for predictions. It's a place for truth, for soul-aligned growth, for the deep, steady wisdom that only signs like Capricorn can truly understand. You've spent enough time preparing. Now it's time to live what's already been decided. Your direction isn't forming anymore. It's locked. Now walk it.